Welcome to the Creating Experience podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of unforgettable events. I'm Emma, and I'm joined by my co-host James. Together, we bring you years of experience in the event industry.
This week, we're talking things you need to consider when reviewing your supplier quotes.
Yes.
Because
I was annoyed last night.
You were annoyed last night. Which is great, because it makes great podcast
great content. I'm
great
like,
content.
was talking about this and then went, this would make a really good podcast. Let's record it.
Yeah.
So,
but reviewing supplier quotes, and I suppose for us as the supplier, we get frustrated from our end because there's been so many times where we've lost a job, potentially because the client hasn't, the term comparing apples with apples. And oranges with oranges.
It's like a daggy term.
Sometimes in the event industry, a lot of the stuff that you quote for, a lot of it is service-based and the actual physical delivery. It's not like you're ordering
A hamburger.
X amount of this or X amount of that and it's got to turn up.
Yeah.
There's generally a service element to that, which then comes down to everything from, how the experience is in the lead up, the prep work done by the company, the things they might have in the background on event day to cover hiccups, how they handle the hiccup.
That's probably a good one, actually, because people can do events but there's going to be issues from time to time, and it's the way people respond to it. Yeah.
Obviously, everyone loves a perfect event, but there's always a chance that something could happen. And it's obviously how you respond to it, or how you adapt to it.
Yes.
Or how your crew deal with it.
Yeah.
Or how your crew even deal with it and respond to
it. Actually, we were
challenges.
saying that today.
So
what I was ranting about was this.
So the first one is, are all the requirements covered?
Yep. So what do you mean by that?
So, well, typically, if someone sends us a quote, a lot of the time, we're straight on the phone to call them to ask for a whole range of things.
Yeah.
And sometimes there might even be things that we bring up that they haven't thought
about.
of.
Yep.
But then on our quote, we've factored that in.
But
then someone else, another supplier that you might have dealt with, might have just responded straight away to your email. Boom, boom, boom.
Here's a standard quote.
And if it was something like the bump in time, for example, can only be an hour and a half,
which is something that
not 4 hours, which we obviously spoke about.
Yeah.
But for us, that's the difference of maybe putting
one or two texts on
a 4-hour load in, as opposed to putting 6.
That's right.
Depending on the scale of the job. Yeah. So making sure that all your requirements are covered.
Yeah.
And obviously that comes down to the person getting the quotes, making sure that as they speak to suppliers, if they become more educated maybe on what they need, going back
and asking
that.
And it might be a thing where if they do get 2 quotes and they're substantially different and they don't understand how to read it, then going back to the supplier.
Yep.
They don't necessarily have to show them the pricing, but maybe share with them what's being supplied and then looking at the difference.
Yep.
And then we could point out to say, well, they haven't included this, this, and this.
Yep.
We have.
That's right.
So at the end of the day, don't look at the price straight away. Obviously, that's the first thing that people kind of do. It's kind of like a human instinct.
The wedding industry is like notorious for it. And
I'm probably the same.
Well, yeah. The sad part is, actually. Yeah.
What's the first thing you do when you get a quote?
I typically look at the price.
Yeah.
But then we weigh up.
Yeah, what's on offer.
That's me. Sometimes I'm very I'll spend too long
a lot analytical. And it's
apparently that's a Callaghan trait, though.
Oh my gosh, it's so annoying sometimes. Bruce, that's not you. Will he listen to our podcast?
I don't know. I think Mum's just about to share it with him. No. Making sure all your requirements are covered. Yeah. And if new stuff pops up, making sure that you then go back to those other suppliers. If you want to still explore those other suppliers, you might go you find that this person you're talking to obviously knows their stuff.
Yeah.
Which is then something to take into account. Yeah. Too, is then the person's experience level
delivering
and how they make you feel
Yeah. Do
in
you
the
have
process.
a relationship, and do they make you feel confident
Yeah.
that they're going to deliver the job?
Yeah.
Because they know what they're talking about.
Exactly right. I mean, we've got a number of suppliers that will just call us now purely because we've built that
Yeah, the
relationship
relationships, yeah.
and that trust with them,
Yeah.
where to the point where it costs what it costs.
Yeah.
It costs what it costs,
And they can
but
always ask for some
we'll
wiggle.
always work
Yeah,
with people too, though.
yeah.
When it comes to that, like if they go, well, typically one of our questions straight up, so we just can cut the crap. Is
What's your budget?
What's your budget?
And please have a budget.
Well,
Surely
I mean,
there's
if some people don't,
Yeah.
don't then act so shocked when you get the figure.
Yeah. I mean, you
Bec-
kind of, yeah.
Because
It's a tough one,
at that
actually,
point, we
'cause-
will typically educate the person
Yeah.
and go, well, you're realistically looking at $3,000,
Yeah.
and then
But some people do say, oh, I didn't even think about this, and
Yeah.
this, or
Yeah.
I didn't think it would cost that much, but maybe it does. But okay, maybe I need to find some more money somewhere else.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Maybe that yeah, there's some things that you can cut costs on.
It's like, you're going to name.
No, I wasn't. I was about to.
Thought, oh my
I was about
gosh,
to.
you're
But I was
about
like,
to.
no, I'm not going to do that.
So other things to think about when you're looking at quotes, and things that we don't necessarily see in quotes
Mm-hmm.
as well, is thinking about these people need to run a business, meaning
We're
us.
businesses.
We are businesses. We're not people. We're people, obviously, but we're businesses. We have to.
It's not just the
pay
equipment.
the bills.
I think it's more the equipment side of things. It's
Yeah.
not just the equipment. It's like the caterer. It's not just the food that just magically
Yeah,
appears.
it's not.
It's not the
just
decorator.
The gig day.
It's- yeah.
That is, and I think that was my point last night. Is there is so much more to a gig than just on the gig day. So, and there was that analogy of the tip of the iceberg,
Yeah.
and so the events, all the bits and pieces happen under the water where you don't see it,
And it's big.
and it's big, and
It's
then
75% of the gig.
yeah, and then coming up to event day, you just see the peak.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, people go, oh, you've got a really big day, a busy day. And I said, well, no, because I've already done so much of the work.
Yeah.
So
The gig day is
run
the easy day.
sheets and print, like everything is done. I literally turn up and have to run a stage.
Yeah.
I mean, the boys do a lot. You and the boys do a lot more from a bump in perspective.
Yes, in terms of physically setting the
Physically
gear. But even
setting it up.
still, like there's a lot of pre-prep work that's like you look at like for us with like Glenworth Valley, for example, with how many of our bands we had over those 2 days. Like
Yeah.
we make sure, and we only had 15-minute changeovers. 15-minute changeovers, but we obviously are getting all the tech specs from the bands.
That's right.
Getting all the latest tech specs from the bands.
Yeah, so I get the tech specs and then we get the latest tech
And then we get the
specs.
latest tech specs. But going through that and then making sure that all our gear matches up so that, and typically what we find then is that we're actually over prepared because we've prepped to their spec and they might have cut particular bits and
does happen.
pieces. But then at least we know that there's no surprises.
Yeah, definitely.
From our end.
Yeah.
And everything, it just happens.
Yeah.
Then so yeah, it's the prep work. It's
Yeah.
that whole iceberg
analogy.
mentality. And if you prepare really well,
Your gig
then
day should
your
be
gig
easy.
day is actually
Yeah.
quite easy.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but you're right. It's obviously the business operation costs, and I think if we list a couple of these things, that's probably really important, particularly if we'll say like the wedding industry, right? Because couples don't plan events all the time, and they are very common with it going, this is what the price is this. That's the cheap. That must be the best option because it's the cheapest.
Yeah.
And
the thing is, I mean, there's so many things. It goes back to that whole, like, do you gel with that person? Are they going to do your job? Is it and even with weddings, is it a company? Yes, you are paying a little bit more. However, if that musician or that DJ or that MC is sick,
yeah,
in our contracts, we have to supply
That's
someone.
right.
So you will never not have a wedding or an event without a person on it.
That's right. I suppose that's definitely a difference sometimes that people need to look at is what is the contingency
Yeah.
plans. Like we've seen a lot of, again, we use the wedding analogy, but it's happened on events too. It's happened on events too.
Last event.
Yeah,
just
where
recently.
people have booked talent direct, for example, rather than going through an agency.
Yeah.
And the artist pulls out, and then the event organizer is left scrambling
That's
on the
right.
day to try and find someone. Whereas if you were to go through an agency, then
got
we're
other
the ones.
options.
Then we're the ones scrambling on the day.
Or we have, I mean, like what we did the other week with our other event at Glenworth, we just troubleshoot it.
Had a solution, sorted it.
Just said, this is what's happened,
Yeah,
and we fixed the problem. And they were like, oh, okay.
And the event organisers didn't have to worry about it. But yeah, well, I mean, we did that on a wedding once. Remember that one?
Oh, yes, I do.
The
At Magenta.
The bride didn't even.
She didn't even know.
realise.
And she came up to the couple and said, thank you. And it was the couple that she had booked, but the couple that she had booked was sick. They were sick, weren't they?
What, when we'd booked the... No, we had a ceremony artist.
Yeah. I thought it was a duo.
Was it a duo?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Because the duo replaced them. So one of the duo members was sick.
It was.
Yeah.
And then we had a whole nother duo
And then whole nother duo replacement.
But
and
they
the
looked very
bride came
similar.
up. They did look similar, and the bride came up and thanked them. And we were like, see, didn't even know, learnt the songs, everything ready to go.
Yeah.
So back to business costs. So
Yes.
these are the things, obviously, that, yes, again, you may pay a little bit more for. However, you've got that backup
That's right.
with all of it. And running a business is hard work when it comes to not hard work. It's not hard work. The costing side.
No, it's
I
just
guess
understanding. It's understanding
operational
the costings of
Yeah.
the business. And I think, I know we're not saying this. Like we're just saying this so that when you look at a price, you're not just going as a set. It's just a TV or it's
Yeah.
just a set of speakers. It's like, well, no, we've got to pull the speakers off the shelf in the
Yes.
warehouse that we pay rent on,
Yeah.
that we pay to maintain,
And we
to then
pay the
deliver
staff
the
for.
gear. Like you got, there are all these other
Yeah.
factors, and it's probably a really important thing sometimes because there's a lot of people in the event industry that sometimes undercharge too, which is great. But as I said, it's that contingency then when something goes wrong. In those scenarios, you're more likely to end up with a phone call that says, oh, sorry, we can't help you.
Yeah.
Even like, oh, sorry, we can't help you. We'll give you your money back.
Yeah.
But that
But
actually
then
doesn't help
it doesn't
you
help you on your wedding
on
day,
the
does
day.
it?
What you want is someone that, yes, they might have cost you a little bit more potentially. But if there is an issue, you're going to the client to say, this has happened, this is our solution,
Yeah.
and it's sorted
And
for
it's
you.
sorted, and then
so
it's
you're
like,
aware of the problem,
Yeah.
but you know then that they're just
It's
sorting
been
it.
sorted. Yeah.
And that is definitely something that you've got to factor. Sometimes those higher quotes, they're the little things that you don't want to experience, but if you do experience them, they are typically sorted.
Yeah. And a lot of the time you mightn't even know.
Well,
might
and
just
there's a
do
lot
it.
of things that just happen that people don't even know have happened. But
Yes.
us, I mean, like I think we like when we get asked to do. I'll give an example. When we get asked to do a band PA
Yep.
for a band gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people will come to us and go, "I got $600," and I'll go. Unfortunately, it's not even going to cover the cost of us to get the staff member in the van
Yeah.
to your job on a Saturday for a couple of hours. Whereas, it's not even going to cover that cost
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And then you've got the equipment,
As
like the
well.
thousands of dollars of equipment that you're hiring out. Like now, the thing is, there are people that will do that,
Yeah.
and that's perfectly fine. But it's those scenarios, and when that person's sick,
Or their equipment doesn't work.
and which is typically when we get the phone call,
Yeah.
and it's just because it hasn't been factored for
Or it
that
hasn't been booked
for that
at all.
scenario. And that's always the thing you've got to sometimes look at worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what those people have done in that scenario. Yeah. And I suppose then the other thing with your quote is to make sure that you communicate with the supplier as to the time frame as to how long you're going to take to make a decision. And obviously, again, if you're calling in your events in 2 weeks, you probably don't have the luxury of stringing it out for another week. You've probably got about 24 hours to make a decision. But even still, then if it is like a 6 months time, or depending on the scale of the event,
It's probably scale and time of year.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and if you're open and communicate that with the supplier.
Yeah, because a lot of companies have to go through a chain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So approval chain. So it might be that you're getting the quote and then it needs to go up a few levels because of costing or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you can just let us know, okay, it's gone to my manager, I'll be back in a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. And then that way the supplier will probably follow you up.
Yeah.
As well. But it's just really important because even in scenarios where maybe you've quoted it 2 months ago and you then go back to the supplier 2 months later and go...
Well, the equipment mightn't be there.
Everything might have just changed.
Yeah.
Or the supplier's just not available too. So it's just, again, making sure that you've got all your elements covered when you get that quote. When you get the quote.
Yeah.
So... but yeah, I don't think there's any other points when it comes to supplier quotes.
No,
I think
it was just
so.
making...
Other than that, you've got making sure all your requirements are covered.
Yep.
Making sure you're comparing
apples with
apples with apples,
or oranges with oranges.
Yeah. Actually, we didn't touch on
making a note of before you start looking for quotes to make sure that you're asking the same questions across the suppliers.
The board. Yeah. And if something comes up, to go back.
And get a
reviewed quote from the other ones. And then obviously taking into consideration, obviously, the business operation quotes. The cost of running a business when you get a quote. You're not just getting the quote for the equipment for that time frame. Otherwise, go buy your own TV and go and hang it and do it all yourself. Yeah. Don't care.
Wow. Don't get you to hang a TV.
For those that book us to get our TVs... They have a stress-free event.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
And then,
did we touch on the reputation of companies?
No, I don't think we jumped into it much. But we spoke about obviously making sure that the company is able to deliver
your event. So what they've got in their quote.
But reputation on that point, I suppose, with the reputation, as I was saying, you can use that sometimes to help justify your more expensive quote. If you, as someone that's choosing between quotes, because obviously sometimes if you're going up the management change, they're going to go, is there a cheaper option? Is there a cheaper option? There is always a cheaper option.
Yeah, but I'm not confident they're going to deliver.
The delivery of your event, this is the thing. Yeah. And again, I always say this, so you can't come back tomorrow and repair your event.
Yeah.
Your event you got one shot at your event. And even as we said with the event planning one, if you don't factor in all those little things that could potentially go wrong, and how people adapt when those things go wrong, that's when you really understand the value of that supplier. Yeah, at the end of the day,
definitely.
But yeah.
And look at their stuff online. Like, take the time to look
at their previous stuff.
Instagram, Facebook, their website, all the different events that they've done before, reviews. Look at everything when you're picking a supplier too, because there are some out there that A, don't have content, so you can't really see what they do anyway, or B, just shouldn't really be doing events. I just sounded like you.
Been hanging around.
I've been hanging around way too long.
But yeah.
So, cool. Oh, well, that's good.
So next time you call us for a quote.
I don't think they're going to call us now. No, we do. We love what we do.
Yep.
So
but no.
And there's lots of love in that quote too.
There is a lot of time put into the quote.
That's probably a really good point, is that we don't just have standard quotes for every single event. It's tailored to what you need. So we don't just put in TVs if you don't want it.
It's not really a cookie cutter solution in a lot of areas. Yeah. There's always going to be typically something that's slightly different from.
Because I know I try and do it for you and I go, okay, I've copied this quote, and then you're like,
yeah.
We need them to change it.
And even down to tech hours.
Yeah.
Tech hours.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the other element.
Everything changes.
That will change it as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, hope that's helped you when you review your quote.
Yeah.
Looking forward to quoting you.
Quoting you.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for checking out the Creating Experience podcast. You can find the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. Be sure to check out our socials as well. We're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn as well. And if you have an event coming up that you need assistance on, feel free to head to our website, www.jcentertainment.com.au, or give us a call on 1-800-JC Events.